The NBA playoffs are amongst us. Ralph and Jeff, thank you guys for putting together this free guide. All right, Ralph, we're going to go over a few highlights. How did playoff teams do versus winning teams that have a win percentage of 60% or higher?
Kelly, we put this in the guide last year, and it was an absolutely must to put it in this year again. You know, you look at the NBA schedule, and how many games down the stretch do we see double-digit lines? Teams as 15 and 16-point favorites. So what I did is this. I broke down home and away. I broke down teams that have a winning percentage of 50% or higher, opponents that have a win percentage of 60% or higher, and then I broke it off home favorites of 3.5 or more, home dogs of 3.5 or more, and home between the threes. I really do like getting much more specific than home favorite and home dog, because when you're a 1-point home favorite or you're a 1-point home dog, it's basically the same. So some of those highlights, you know, we look at Milwaukee and how poorly they've played, but when they're at home against winning teams with the line between the threes, they've gone 7-1 ATS. The New Orleans Pelicans, when they're at home with the line between the threes, playing teams with a winning record, they're only 4-9 ATS. And a couple things to pay attention to. The Bulls only had 3 games this season as a home favorite of 3.5 or more against a team with a winning record. The Hawks only had 5 games. Those teams, I think, are really going to struggle at home against good teams when we get to the playoffs. The Golden State Warriors have gone 15-0 straight up as an away favorite and 13-2 against the spread. And couple over-under situations. Don't just look at the straight up and ATS records. I really use this chart often to look at over-unders, how teams play against good teams offensively or defensively. Well, when my son and I talk about the Cavs, we talk about a defensive-minded team. But when they're playing a team at home as a home favorite of 3.5 or more, a winning team, they're actually 8-1 over-under. And when the Lakers play a good team at home as a home favorite of 3.5 or more, they're actually 1-7 over under. Some things some things that might surprise you. And lastly, the Phoenix Suns at home against a team with a winning record, 5 overs and 17 unders. Look to the Phoenix Suns at home for some unders in the playoffs.
Jeff, during football season, you always give us the streaks. So let's talk about how teams do in the first game of a series on a positive ATS streak or a lengthy over streak.
Yeah, that's one of the big questions. Going into the postseason, are you going to continue the trend that you're on, or are things going to turn around, depending on which way you're running? But you look at teams that have covered 4 games, they're actually cashing in at 63% against the spread since 2003 in that first game of the next series. But you look at it, even in round 1, that ATS number is actually just under 58% covering. But when you've covered 4 or more games in a row and you look into those later rounds 2, 3, and 4, you're looking at noticeably higher covering numbers there against the spread. I mean, round 2, teams coming in, covering 4 or more straight games, have gone on to cover the next one again in over 68% of their opportunities. So at least in against the spread numbers, those numbers tend to continue on the route that they were in during the regular season. If you're covering, that's a team that you're going to want to look to bet on moving ahead in the postseason in that next game. Whereas you look at those over-unders, we're looking at teams that have gone over in 5 or more consecutive games. And this one's actually going to be for any game. But teams that have gone over in 5 straight games in the playoffs, 36% of the time they've gone over. So you're looking at 63% of the time there that next game is looking to go under.
Always interesting stuff there in regards to who's streaking and who's not. One of the things we always talk about during the NBA playoffs is, of course, the Zig Zag Theory. Can you let our audience know what that is? And more importantly, has it been profitable?
Kelly, the last time the zigzag worked I had hair. So that just puts it in perspective, folks. That is something that's happened a long time ago, and it's just not profitable anymore. Let me put it in context. I went back to 2017 because I wanted to use current numbers. I did exclude the 2019-2020 playoff because remember, that was in Orlando in the bubble with the COVID year. So that wasn't the same situation as playing home and away and traveling. But if you blindly played every team off a straight up loss since 2017, you have covered 46.8%. So not only is Zig Zag not working, it's been a negative situation. But I do want to take this one step further, and these charts are all in the guide. If a team is off a home loss, they have gone 55.7% in the next game. If they've been off a loss as a home favorite, they have actually covered 65% the next game. And if the team is off a loss as a home favorite of 5 or more, they have actually covered 71% of the time. So while Zig Zag is not in effect anymore, certainly playing teams off a home loss and playing teams off a loss as a home favorite have been very profitable.
It's pretty funny, Ralph, because I've only handicapped NBA, probably since my days at NBA TV. And that would mean it has never been profitable yet. They love to talk about it. That's what Ralph's here to do. Give us some trends and angles to refute maybe some of these old theories. Jeff, all right, we got to talk about game one. And I'm looking for a couple situations here, specifically game one of a series with teams off a good or a bad shooting performance.
Yeah, similar to what we talked about with the against the spread numbers that I referred to in the first section. Let's see, do teams really continue the trends that they're on, or do the playoffs start a new run? And it seems here, again, we're going down a similar path. Teams that have shot under 40% in the previous game, playing in a series game one all the way back to 2004, they're covering under 36% of the time. So those teams that are struggling, even in the last game of the regular season, going into game one of the playoffs in general, those teams are really struggling to get things going. And they've covered, just under 36% of the time, like I mentioned. So definitely a bet against team there. But you look at teams that are coming off of a hot shooting performance, teams that have shot 50% or better. And this is looking specifically here at your season finale, your regular season finale, shooting 50% or better. Because game one in the playoffs since 2013, if you shoot 50% in the game leading up to this or better, you're covering almost 63% of the time.
Wow, I love those good teams because, well, Ralph, that is what we want to bet on here at Wager Talk. I'm tired of betting on the garbage teams. Ralph, you do these charts for us all year round at Wager Talk, but the chart you did on home favorites by round, this one was particularly interesting to me. Can you tell our viewers what they need to be looking out for?
Kelly, this is one of the simplest charts, but is one of the charts that you should pay as much attention to as any chart in the guide. And it's simple. All I did, 2 columns, home favorites by round 1, 2, 3, and 4, home dogs by round 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let me just break it down for you. Home favorites by round, again, this goes back to 2017, excluding the bubble year. Home favorites in the opening round, the 1 against 8, the 2 against 7, the 3 against 6, home favorites, 59.3%. That's pretty good. We're talking over 150 game sample size, and you're cashing almost 60%. Round 2, home favorites drop to 54.7%. Still profitable. Round 3, we're into the semifinals, folks. These teams are into playoff mode. Home favorites, 50%. NBA Finals going back to 2017, home favorites, 50%. So what is it telling me? Round 1, I'm not going to automatically bet home favorites, but I'm sure going to think about it. Round 2, a slight lean to home favorites. Round 3 and round 4, look at each situation individually. Don't put any extra weight on betting those home favorites or home dogs.
All right, Jeff, not done yet. We've got a few more situations, but let's talk game 7. There's a lot to always be made about game 7, and you know why. Over under data, though. What do we know about teams coming off a game 7?
Yeah, we all know how emotional, how exciting a game 7 can be from our viewpoint, but the same thing applies to the players. It's a big deal, it's a big game, and it usually means your opponent in the next series is going to have a little more rest than you do. And it's proven that betting against the team that played in a game 7 in the previous series has been profitable. Teams that are not coming off of a game 7, as I mentioned, have that extra rest, but they also didn't have to deal with all that emotion. Those teams have covered over 64% of the time against the spread since 2005. And that's almost 45 games.
Something to look for, Ralph. I like that one. But you know what? I also like underdogs. But this one's a little tricky. I know we don't see a lot of number 1 seeds as a dog, but if we were to, would there be some value there?
Kelly, you know me. As much as I look up stats, there's good stats, there's mediocre stats, there's break-even stats, and there's bad stats. This one caught me by surprise, but when I thought about it more, it makes total sense. If you have a number 1 seed as a dog of 2 or more, this is going back quite a while, guys. In round 1, those teams are 1-9 against the spread, 10%. Round 2, 40.5%. Round 3, 29.2%. And in the finals, a number 1 seed as a dog, 45% against the spread. And, while you say, oh my God, a number 1 seed is that bad? If you're a number 1 seed in the opening 2 rounds and you're a dog, you obviously have major injury issues, and they're a reason you're an underdog. The data shows us the first 2 rounds, a number 1 seed as a dog of 2 or more is 18 and 34 against the spread. And again, round 3, a number 1 seed as a dog, 19 and 46, 29.2%. So don't get cutesy thinking, I'm going to find this great value. There's a reason they're an underdog.
Yeah, kind of like betting those ranked teams catching points during college football season. That's what that one reminds me of. All right, at CalSportsLV is Ralph's Twitter. Guys, he puts up tons of stuff over there. JM Sports CLE is Jeff's. But Jeff, before I let everybody go, we got one more stat. Take us home.
Yeah, let's put this one pretty simply for you guys. Friends don't let friends bet overs in game 7 of a series. I talked about those ATS numbers in game 7, but if you've bet the under in every game 7 since 2002, you've won almost 64% of those games. But, one thing that really did stand out to me, round 1 is a little bit of an outlier there. It's actually a 50-50 split. So 50-50, game 7, you can go over under, but you look rounds 2, 3, and in the finals, back since 2002, it's a combined 9 and 27 over under. So a good majority of those game 7s are staying under. Like I said, almost 64% cash in there if you're betting every under in those game 7s. So remind your friends not to bet those overs in the game 7s moving forward this year.
Tired legs, says the data. Thank you to Ralph Michaels. Thank you to Jeff Michaels. Again, you guys can get their NBA playoff guide, wt.buzz/RM, wt.buzz/JMS.